Yeah, and tonight I got a brand new video for us. Following the drama that has appeared due to Kamala Harris's vice presidential pick, Tim Walz, I think now is as good a time as any to begin making a preliminary map as we're heading into the DNC soon. To begin, let's stick with our safe and solid Republican states. So, Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, the Dakotas, Nebraska's first, Nebraska's third, Kansas, Oklahoma, Utah, Arizona, Missouri. You know the deal. All of these states, these are solid. Now we got our safe red states. These guys. All right, now for the Democrats. They got D.C., obviously, Illinois, New York, Connecticut, Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Vermont. Oh, and Maine's first. Oh, and of course Hawaii. So this is the current map. We got Trump at 219, Harris at 191. All these states in white are states that have a non-zero chance of going to one candidate or the other. All right. I'm not saying that Trump's going to win New Mexico or Minnesota, or that something stupid's going to happen where Harris somehow flips North Carolina. No, that's not what I'm saying. All right. Let's get down into the real meat and potatoes. So first off, Walz helps Harris a little bit in Minnesota, obviously, because that's his home state. He's the governor, won re-election against a couple awful candidates. I put this one in tilt R last time. This time I'm putting it in lean D. I think that the turnout that could gain that she gains from the far left voters, in Minneapolis, St. Paul, that's what she really needed to pick this off. Up next is New Mexico. I got this one as likely D. Trump still has a shot, but it's not looking too hot here. The problem with New Mexico for Trump is that he needs to supercharge his turnout with Latinos, and that just ain't gonna happen. He maybe in 20 years or so, once the trends have solidified, we could see New Mexico go into like a Trumpy candidate. But today, nah, that just ain't flying, unfortunately. So we got Minnesota, New Mexico down. Next up is New Hampshire. This is a tilt Democrat state. Actually, no. I'm gonna make this a lean Democrat state. I don't think it's quite competitive enough to be called a tilt state, but we'll see how it is. Overall, though, Walz he does something for these like sort of center left independent type voters who might have been considering a vote for Kennedy. So with that, that's not exactly a terrible uh, result for her. And that is the Democrat, the obvious likely or leaning Democrat states. Now let's go to North Carolina. This is a state that Trump's doing excellent in. We got the trends with non-college educated blacks in this part of the state, as well as the North Carolina GOP simply being a well-oiled machine. They are like our version of the Minnesota DFL or the I want to say the Minnesota DFL or the Colorado Dems. These are two extremely competent state Democrat parties. Our version of that is the North Carolina GOP, right? We ain't losing North Carolina this time. especially not with Trump at the top of the ticket. I'm predicting Trump wins the state by about 5 or 6 at least. Up next is Nevada. This one, I used to have it as safe. I'm bumping it down to likely just because, the polls are starting to narrow up, and uh, Harris has, though it has been limited, she has been gaining in the polls. As a result, I got Nevada as a likely R state. I think Trump does great with the rules, and I think that he might even be able to flip whatever, I believe that's Clark County where Vegas is in. If he does that, that would be epic. But yeah, his policies and stuff like no tax on tips, very smart move by the Trump campaign to uh, make policy that doesn't feel like pandering, but still obviously is useful to you as you're running a campaign. Up next is Georgia. This is another likely R state. Kamala just don't got that appeal that Obama did, nor is she going to get black turnout like Biden. This is a state that, while Dems might have thought in the past, they were doing grading because, Atlanta is growing and, it's still growing right now. It's not like it's impossible that the state can lurch to the left. The problem is that a lot of these low turnout Appalachian voters up here, low turnout coastal whites, and the non college educated blacks are all trending to the right. Or in the case of those two aforementioned white groups, are just turning out in higher numbers. As a result, I just don't see how Georgia goes to Kamala, at least not right now. I got this as a Trump +5 state. I think he matches his 2015 margin in this state. So now that we got some of these, these Sunbelt states that are less competitive, let's go to probably the most significant pickup that the Walls VP pick has given to Kamala, and that's going to be the Badger State. I'm predicting now that Kamala actually is going to win this state by a tilt margin. Reason why is that Walls, he can grift really effectively, and I think he's going to get enough of these driftless area whites to vote against their best interests and pull the lever for Kamala. This also might be screwing Hovde over, so yeah, that this is the one. If there's anything substantially positive that the Walls pick does for Kamala when it comes to the battleground map, it is flipping Wisconsin. But that's it. That's it. Oh, and by the way, Nebraska second is likely. Kamala's, she's a corporate stooge. She ain't gonna have any problems with them insurance company types over here in Omaha. Yeah, that Trump still has a shot, but it's not looking very probable over here. Next up is Virginia. This is another Tilt R state, but I'm changing it to Tilt D, and the reason why is I just, uh, even though the state I think is going to be in the long term trending back in our direction, it just ain't looking good for Trump personally as a candidate. He don't get that turnout necessary in Nova. And even though, and the problem is Virginia blacks, they tend to be more educated than blacks in, say, North Carolina or Georgia. That's another issue for Trump in the great Commonwealth of Virginia. That said, this state is, I'm predicting Harris, like, it's going to go down the wire. Like Harris plus 0.2. This is going to be a really, really close state. Probably just as close as Wisconsin up here. But yeah, this is, there's a huge enthusiasm gap, and that's a big issue for the Democrats, is that because they have such low enthusiasm, Virginia's going to be slipping quite a bit. You'd see a 10-point shift in the state. I mean, we saw more than 10 points in and over the course of just 1 year with the Youngkin election. So, hey, it ain't impossible. But for right now, yeah, I got Virginia as tilt D. Um, yeah. Now we got, let's do Maine at large. This is a tilt R state, in my opinion. Reason for it is just these voters up here, they just keep trending to the right. And these voters down here, sure, they might be energized a bit by Walls, but I don't know if they're going to turn out like they have in years past. As a result, I got this state as tilt R, but you could make a very strong argument for going Dem, and I wouldn't fight you on that. Now we got these three. Let's start with Arizona. I got this one as lean R. I got it like Trump plus 4.5, just barely outside of likely territory. I think he picks up with the Indians up here, and I think that he stops some of the bleeding in Maricopa. And I think he even makes gains up in the northwest of the state and among the Latinos in the south. As a result, I got this state going towards Trump. And with that, we got 270 electors. Still, lean doesn't exactly mean fully comfortable, but I still see the state as going to Trump at the end of the day. Up next, we got Michigan. This is another lean Republican state. I got this one Trump plus 3.5. He's going to make a bunch of gains in the palm of the hand, and even more so in the Upper Peninsula, where turnout is far from being maxed out. This is a state that Democrats should be worrying about in the long term because of the white working class trends and the possibility of a candidate to come out there and really energize white working class turnout in off years. As a result, I got Michigan going for Trump, and Pennsylvania I also got going for Trump. Reason why for PA is the greater New York, Philly area, it's slowly trending towards the right. The GOP has gotten net gains in voter registration in literally every single county in the state. That whole Scranton Joe grift ain't going to work, especially not when, quote unquote, Scranton Joe ain't even on the ticket. Plus, Trump's probably going to make gains in Allegheny, and the Dems have some really weak down ballot candidates who are likely going to contribute to dragging down Kamala. As a result, this is my map so far. Just to go over some other stuff real quick. Just because I have states like Oregon, Washington, Colorado, Illinois, New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, Ohio, Iowa, Maine second, Florida, and Texas as not solid, don't mean that these states are by any means in play. Like hell, Florida, Ohio, Iowa, or Texas are going to vote D, especially with someone as weak and polarizing as Kamala Harris. And I doubt that Colorado, Illinois, New York, etc., are going to vote for Trump, even though, at least in the case of New York and the Pacific Northwest and the New York metro area, I could see them trending to the right. Still, it's still looking very good for Trump. But what Harris has managed to do here is she's cut her losses. And again, she's not going, highly unlikely that she wins. But this is a good strategy for the long term of the Democrats. She's cutting her losses right now, making sure she doesn't just completely shit the bed. Because if she picked oh God forbid, she picked like Rashida Tlaib as her VP, we'd see freaking red New Jersey at that point. But no, she is playing for her team, and she realizes she still has to run a campaign, even if it's doomed, because there are some people down ballot who really need that boost that she will provide. With that said, thank you all for watching, and have a great evening. Bye, chuddies.